About 2 weeks ago, Verizon sent me the Samsung Galaxy S3 to take a look at. The Galaxy S3, if you're not familiar with it, has a 4.8-inch 1280 by 720 pixel display. It's got Corning Gorilla Glass 2 on it, so it's not quite the same as Gorilla Glass 1. I think it's actually a little bit less strong, but it's thinner and it's supposed to protect against scratches just as well. It has a pin-tile display, which a lot of people have been complaining about, but in terms of the rest of the specs, it has a dual-core 1.5 GHz Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 processor, 2 gigs of RAM, your choice of 16 or 32 gigs of built-in storage, and your choice between white and pebble blue colors. It has a front-facing 1.9 megapixel camera that's capable of 720p video, and a rear-facing 8 megapixel camera that is capable of 1080p video at 30 frames per second and zero shutter lag on all of the cameras on the phone. These are all things you've probably heard before if you've done any sort of research into the Galaxy S3, so let's move on to my thoughts and opinions of the device. Now, in the bit of time that I had it, I used this device as my daily driver. From day one, I got it on a Friday, and that evening I used it for 3.5 or 4 hours straight, watching video on Netflix. I used it every day while I was at work. I used it every evening when I was at home with my family. The only time I used my Galaxy Nexus during that time was when someone called me directly on my personal number instead of calling my Google Voice number, which I instruct people to do. So I definitely did get to jump headfirst into this and get a lot of experience with it very quickly. In terms of performance, it of course is running Ice Cream Sandwich version 4.0.4. There is an expected upgrade to Jelly Bean coming in Q4 of this year, and it has the latest version of Samsung's TouchWiz interface on top of it. I have to say, it was not terrible. I know a lot of people do not care for the TouchWiz interface. Most people don't seem to care for any of the customized interfaces, and personally, I didn't care for it. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. It was usable. In terms of performance, of course, it was very responsive. Applications, of course, came up very quickly. Although I did have some problems. I know I tried to install the OnLive application, which allows you to play games online, some of them for free, and it did not launch for me. Once the app actually started up, it crashed every time. I tried uninstalling and reinstalling it and had the same problem. Maybe that was just the device that I was on. Maybe it was the version of software or something. Not really sure, just didn't work. In terms of phone calling, voice calling, yes, it worked very well. It's a phone, it sounded very clear, very crisp, and the external speaker on the device was very nice. And that's, of course, coming from the Galaxy Nexus, where it is not so good. It's usable, but it's not very loud. The Galaxy S3 did have a very nice, loud, clear speaker. And like I said, on the first day, I watched it for 3.5 to 4 hours of video, and it was extremely watchable. Of course, I was sitting at about 12 to 18 inches away from it, so there wasn't a whole lot of space for there to need to be that loud of a sound. But that does lead me to the next idea, battery life. As I mentioned, I'm normally a Galaxy Nexus user. The Galaxy Nexus is terrible for battery life. Hate to say that, but I've got the extended battery, and on the weekend, when I'm at home, when I'm using my Galaxy Nexus, the battery life is terrible. Well, the Galaxy S3, in my opinion, in my experience, had amazing battery life. I was able to go from that first day when it had relatively close to full charge, watched hours and hours of video on it, left it off the charger overnight, and was able to use it throughout the entire day the next day. When I went to bed the first night, it was at about 50% battery life left, and that's, like I said, several hours of video later. The next morning, it was just a couple of percent lower than that, and by the end of that second day, I think it was 7 or 8 o'clock when I actually had to put it on the charger because it was about to die. By that point, it had reached, like I said, next to nothing. So we're sitting at over a day, maybe a day and a half, almost, not quite, more like 18 hours of good solid use, and then some downtime when I was sleeping. Now, the day-to-day stuff for me, I work in a place where I don't get very good cell service. I actually, if I moved to the next cubicle over, I could probably get really good 4G reception, but the cubicle that I'm in, I get no service whatsoever. I'm lucky to hit 1x. Occasionally, a 1 bar of 3G pops up, and then it goes immediately away. Which means that any device that I have is going to be terrible at work. It means that any device I take in there is going to just die before the day is over. My Galaxy Nexus does really well to make it until 2 o'clock in the afternoon before it's about to die. The Galaxy S3, I was able to make it through the entire day at work. By the end of the day, it was normally at about 50% battery life left, and that's taking it off the charger at 7 o'clock in the morning, working from 8 until 4 something, and then driving home. So realistically, that's pretty impressive. Compared to some other devices, it may not be the best thing that's out there, but if I remember correctly, the battery is replaceable as well, and there should be some larger ones available. It is a 2100 milliamp hour battery. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but I'm pretty sure I'm close to that. So realistically, battery was good for me. The next big thing that I would use it for personally, video playback. Like I said before, watched it for hours and hours that first day and several times throughout the 2 weeks that I had it, and video was just wonderful. Crisp, clear, the big, bright, beautiful screen made everything very nice to watch. Personally, I didn't have a problem with the pen tileness of the display, but then again, I was not holding it up to my face like this, so I would not have noticed. Also, I didn't have the accessory to hook it up to things like my monitor here in the background, so I wasn't able to see it at a much higher resolution. I wasn't able to test it with anything like that, so that's really not an issue for me. That is sort of one of the complaints that I have. This is the MHL to HDMI adapter I have for my Galaxy Nexus, works on the Galaxy S2, and all sorts of other MHL-based devices. Does not work on the Galaxy S3. They made some sort of a change in this newer device that it requires a newer adapter that has much more pins in use and just doesn't work. So that's a bit of a downer for me. And the other thing for me, being a YouTuber, being a vlogger, being a semi-amateur photographer, the big thing for me is a camera. And the camera on this, it was very fast. It took pretty good pictures, although I can't really say that they were outstanding. The one thing I noticed about them was when you get out in bright sunshine, it washes out. I put my Galaxy Nexus right up next to the Galaxy S3 and was taking pictures at a friend's son's birthday party. And the pictures from the Galaxy S3 just all looked washed out. Anything that was white, completely overexposed. And the Galaxy Nexus pictures, even though they're lower resolution, lower quality, they were much more contrasty, much better color saturation, and just look better overall. That's not to discount it entirely. That could just be a setting, that could just be any number of things, but that was just my experience with it. It wasn't particularly good, and I did go through as many of the settings as I could find. I also tested the video quality, so I'll go ahead and show you a couple of video samples from inside and outside. And this is the front-facing camera in really bright outside sunlight. And this is a quick test of the front-facing camera at 720p using my studio lights here in the office. And a test of the rear-facing camera using the same studio lights. This should be at 1080p and hopefully it's pointing at me. And there you have it. Again, not the best thing that I've ever seen, but definitely usable footage. I mean, just for a traditional vlogger, it's definitely good and usable footage. For anything more than daily vlogging or small home movies, I don't know if I would want to do that, but that's just me talking. Now, the Samsung-specific features, the big things that they were touting along with this were the S-Voice, where you could hit the button and it would talk to you kind of like Siri. You go back and forth with it. My experience with that was kind of limited just because I was playing with Google Now on Jelly Bean on my Galaxy Nexus a lot, but using S-Voice seemed a whole lot slower. It seemed to get the answers not quite right, not quite the same kind of responses, and just not really as useful of information for me. The majority of the other big features that they touted, like the S-Beam and the AirShare and whatever else, they all seem to rely on having other Galaxy S3 devices around, and I don't know anybody that owns a Galaxy S3, so I wasn't able to test them. I did test the near-field communication very briefly. It worked. It got the job done. I guess it's okay. Like I said, I didn't have another Galaxy S3 to test any expanded capabilities, so not really useful there. I did, however, test out the pop-up play. I found it was very, very limited. The only things that you can really pop-up play on are videos that are in the built-in gallery or the built-in video player. You can't do it with Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, any sort of DRM-based things, so very, very limited. And I found that there are other apps, third-party apps, if you'll call them that, that will allow you to do that with just about whatever you want to do, so again, that makes it kind of not as useful for me. As far as the Smart Stay feature, again, that's been ripped out by the community at this point and made available on other devices, and actually I think there's a clone of it that was talked about on XDA TV just the other day. How useful is that? I'll be real honest with you, I didn't even think to test it just because the majority of the time I was using the device, it was just, you know, use it, put it away. What I did notice, though, when I looked away from the device, it was not that it would, slowly go down. It's like all of a sudden the screen would dim, but it would dim jerkily. And maybe that's the device that I was using, and I know jerkily is not really a word, but it was just a very jerky 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of stepping down to a darker screen brightness, and then it would go off very quickly. Within 30 seconds it would go off, and I know that's the predetermined setting that can be changed. The biggest thing for me there was it wasn't a casual fade. It was hard to describe, and I don't think I captured any footage of it. As you probably can tell, I don't have the device anymore. I had to ship it back yesterday, and I'm making the video now with B-roll footage that I took earlier. We do what we have to do. So all in all, I think I've hit on the big points as far as the device is concerned. It's very thin, very light, very large, has excellent battery life. Camera is pretty decent. I mean, the video quality is good, the pictures could be better, and the performance, it's good. You know, if it were not good, I would be very, very disappointed. I put a quadrant up one side next to the other with my Galaxy Nexus, and it kicked the living crap out of my Nexus. My Nexus gets about 2600 on the quadrant score. The SGS3 got about 5000 consistently. I know that's not really a good metric or anything, but they did kind of measure up along those lines. And actually, I put them up side by side in terms of 4G speeds, which I forgot to mention earlier. And I know my Nexus is having some radio issues because I'm on Jelly Bean, but the SGS3 was consistently hitting 40 to 50 megabits per second download speeds. I saw it get up as high, and this is the highest I've ever seen it, as 59 or 60 megabits per second download and 35 megabits per second upload, which that's just ridiculous for 4G speeds. I do look forward to seeing higher speeds in the future, and I would love to see them on my Galaxy Nexus as well. But anyway, like I said, I think that's the majority of the stuff I wanted to cover. It's an excellent device. It's a very fast performer. It, for the price, is amazing, and if that's what you want, awesome. Personally, as you can tell, I chose to go with the Galaxy Nexus because I want to get the latest and greatest software as soon as it's available, or available from the community because Verizon chooses not to release it in a timely fashion. And I want to make sure to have a device that's going to have a little bit of staying power. I know the SGS3 will, but more and more over the years I've heard, you know, the non-Nexus devices are not really where it's at. So for me, personally, I chose to go with the Nexus. In terms of you may be more inclined to go with the SGS3. As always, I do recommend, if you like this device or if you are considering buying a new device, try to find it in a store, try to find a friend that has it, find somebody close by that you can get hands-on with it and see for yourself how you like it and how it performs for you. Because it may, you may not like the interface, you may not like the look and feel, you may not like the performance, you may love it. It may be the best thing you've ever had. But that is all from me for today. Consider this day one of Veda. I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to keep up with that, but Veda is a vlog every day in August thing, so I might try to do just a quick little something every day to get back into the habit of making videos on a regular schedule. If that's something you're not particularly interested in, I can just not do it, or I can do it over on another site like Keek, or I can do it on another channel. I'm up for it, whatever. I was just thinking of trying to find some sort of a tech topic to cover on a daily basis until the end of August. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review, and if you did, hit the like button down below. And if you are not already subscribed to this channel, I would definitely appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button up above to be notified when I put up new content. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.